Hey, what is up, headhunters and executive recruiters? This is David Stephen Patterson. You may know me as DSP. This is the Thrive Daily series for recruiters and how to pivot your business so you can survive and thrive in this recession or whatever you want to call it. I prefer to call it an economic shift because that's what's happening. The market is shifting and we need to shift with it. We need to be first movers. So I'll be coming out every day to talk about cash management, business development, recruiting, employee management, mindset, even fitness during the lockdown, anything you may need to know to make sure that you are ahead of the game. So before you watch, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified when videos come out. They'll be coming out daily for the time being. Also, there is going to be a podcast. The link is going to be down below. Also, we have a guide. The link will also be down below. So sign up for all of our resources, and most importantly, though, sign up at thrivedaily.io. The link is also down below, and get notified as we release more trainings for free every single day. And with that said, enjoy the show. All right. So that said, let's get down to beeswax, and let's talk about the six pillars. So the six pillars is something I learned from a mentor of mine, or something similar anyway. I just really modified it into our business, but it's actually the basis of an assessment that I gave to a lot of the members in the DYC challenge. And it's the assessment is about 125 question assessment that, as some have called, soul crushing. And but soul crushing in a good way, right? Because it asks a lot of questions that are very, very to the point, or very biting. Meaning, oftentimes it's hard for us to look in the mirror and face the music of who we really are. And oftentimes that is really, really important to do. To really look at your finances, to really look at how you deliver to your clients, et cetera. Because we tend to be in an echo chamber of one. Right? We think our shit don't stink, but in reality, it does. And in reality, we may not be the best recruiter out there. We may not have the best pitch, the best finance, the best whatever. And it's important for us to take a hard look at what we who we are, right? And so this challenge, the assessment was really based off of that. I had a set of questions in each of these pillars and was designed to have you take a hard look at your business. Now, those six pillars that we're going to talk about today are, these six pillars are your mindset, your marketing / leads. You kind of say it, but really your mindset, your marketing, your sales, your operations. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sales, delivery. Excuse me. I'm getting these out of order, right? Those first four apply for all recruiters, whether you are an independent recruiter or not. Okay. Now the last two are really more in line with owners and independent recruiters, but can still apply to recruiters who work for someone else, and that would be operations and team, and then finances and cash, actually. Okay, so we're going to touch on each of these a little bit, and then what we're going to do is over the next number of days, we're going to dive into each one in a bit more detail. Okay, but those are the six areas that you need to really kind of assess your business at. And for those of you who are, let's say, not an owner, not in a position where you are, let's say, where you own a firm or where you currently employ anybody else, do know that, and this is really important to realize, is that this, I'm just looking up some notes here. This recession is going to bring about a lot of independent recruiters that are going to hit the market, because you're going to have a lot of these bigger firms that will start shedding their people, right? Particularly maybe they're low producers, they're mid-tier producers, or maybe these firms will make certain shifts and decide to get out of certain markets, in which case they may shut down divisions. So you're going to have recruiters that are going to be hitting the market, and a lot of or in fact, you may have other search firms fold as well, because a lot of them run very, very thinly. And what's going to happen is you're going to have recruiters that are at home in quarantine. They know how to recruit, and they've got a computer, they've got a phone, they can't get a 9-to-5 job. And so what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do what comes naturally to them, and they're going to go and recruit or try to, get a job order. And what's going to happen is a $300,000 biller at, random firm who makes 100 grand a year now might be thinking, well, hey, heck, if I can maybe bill 100 grand out of my house, I can still do pretty well for myself right now and see myself through. Right. So you're going to have a lot of recruiters hitting the market. There's going to be a lot of competition, or at least a lot more competition, whether it's good or bad competition. Right. We can't, I hate to always say it's going to be bad competition, because there may be really good people that may be hitting the streets and hitting in and going into your market. I mean, let's not, again, have blinders on. Let's be realistic. Okay. But it's something to consider. And some of you and some of the folks on this live or watching this later may be in the same boat here pretty soon. So it's just something that to consider. Many of you may be business owners here pretty soon. Maybe some of you may be looking forward to it, right? But it is something that you have to really think about and consider, okay? Anyway, that said, let me, sorry here. I am trying to find here some notes I have. Oh, here it is. Got it. All right, so let's dig into some of these pillars. Let's look at mindset. Let me see if I have any questions here first before I move on. No. Hey, what's up, David? Hey, David. Yes. Got your message, by the way. Let's meet tomorrow morning. By the way, we got to connect so we can start your campaign. All right. I don't see any questions here. All right. Let's move on. So let's look at mindset. Mindset right now. There's really a couple different ways to look at mindset, right? There's the mindset of your prospects and the hiring managers and the candidates that you have to work with. That's going to really fall down into your marketing, your sales, your delivery, etc. But just know that obviously there is going to be a lot of mindset changes, not just within you, but also within your market. But some of the biggest mindset issues that I tend to find right now is that, for one, we tend to have this need to basically hit the dopamine triggers in our head every 5 minutes with a fresh dose of fear because of coronavirus, right? In fact, I remember today they just announced a stay-at-home order, right? And of course, I'm sure everybody here in Tampa or in St. Petersburg and Clearwater, they're all checking their phones, checking the internet over and over and over again to see if Ron DeSantis, that the governor here, is going to issue a stay-at-home order, right? And now I think Pinellas County just ordered a stay-at-home order. I believe Tampa is next if it hasn't happened already. And the funny thing is that and I'm the same way. It's very hard to stop myself from doing it, but we're all checking our phones constantly to see if this is going to happen. And one of the first things you need to do right now is that your mindset that you have right now is going to determine how you're going to react to this, right? If you're going to react to this in a positive way, if you're going to react to this in a negative way, if you're going to vacillate between positivity and negativity, and how it's going to affect your family, how it's going to affect your loved ones, your friends, your employees, etc. Right? And when you look at, let's say you have employees. Your employees right now feel like they're sinking in quicksand, and a lot of them are creating their own stories in their head. And for a lot of leaders who, being a leader is really easy in a time of peace, but it takes a lot to become an effective wartime leader. Right now, if you're a leader, you need to be thinking about being a wartime leader, right? Almost like General Patton. General Patton wouldn't have been a very good peacetime leader, but he was a very effective wartime leader. Rough around the edges, but he had confidence, and he had a plan, and he had a mission. It may not have been the perfect mission, it may not have been the perfect plan, but people would rather follow somebody with a plan and a vision than someone who does not, right? So it's really important that when you, if you're a leader in an organization, or if you're even just a leader within your household, whether you're a wife or a husband or a father or a mother, you have to get over yourself, right? You have to have to be willing to, yes, of course, be scared, and yes, have some insecurity. And that's just normal for all of us. But it's important that you have to fake it till you make it. But if you have a family or an organization that is feeling fear, and you're not being that core stable pillar for them, right? Their fear is going to yeah, basically drift over to you. I couldn't think of the right word, but their fear is going to creep over to you, right? And it's like a feedback loop. So you have to be willing to, as they say, stare into the abyss, right? And to be strong, even if you don't feel it. Not always you have to fake it till you make it. There are some resources that I could point to. 'Cause again, I'm going to touch on this briefly. We'll talk more about this as we move forward into future Thrive Dailies, because I have 6 different areas I want to talk about. But so we'll talk more about that. But I do have some resources that you can take a look at. I have a YouTube video about how to find motivation, or how to create motivation at will. So I will remember to post that in the group as well. Okay. And it basically talks about how right now, for a lot of us, we can't find our motivation because, again, we're kind of scared, right? So in that video, it talks about how to kind of separate yourself from your feelings and how to take action to actually create motivation and spin it up inside of us at will, right? So I'm going to post that in the group. You guys take a look at that, and I'll talk more about motivation here, or sorry, about motivation, how to create that when we talk more mindset later. Okay. But again, I want you to be thinking about this. You need to, be strong for yourself, be strong for your family, be strong for your business. Okay. But that also means being honest. So, for example, in terms of mindset, share your financials with your significant other, right? Don't try not to hide things, right? But at the same time, don't be a well of negativity, which means don't go running to your significant other every 5 minutes about all the bad news that you're hearing, right? Or about how the stimulus package just got blocked again, right? Don't go do that. You need to, again, stay positive and keep moving forward, because no matter what happens, the stimulus package will get passed with or without you. The coronavirus is still going to do its thing with or without you. So the only thing you really control is yourself. Okay. We'll talk more about, I'll probably do the mindset lesson tomorrow, most likely. And we'll talk about some other mindset things you can do on a day-to-day basis. We might cover things like meditation, having a morning ritual, eliminating attention suckers out of your life, right? Like this thing, like Facebook or the TikTok or the YouTubes or whatever it is, right? So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But again, that's the mindset, and you really need to be able to assess honestly what your mindset is, right? It's important to ask yourself some pretty hard questions about that and really understand where you're at. Okay. Anyway, we'll move on. Let's talk about marketing. Let me see if I have any questions on that before I move on here. Judy says, look forward to this training every day. Keep me motivated and moving forward. It's a stressful time, but we need to soldier on. Thanks, DSP, for all you're doing for the community. Well, hey, Judy, well, thank you. I appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me, and it helps, actually keeps me centered as well. Having a goal to do this on a daily and almost daily basis also helps me, right? So it's we're definitely helping each other here. All right, let's talk about your marketing. So for those of you who have been in my circle for any length of time, I'm sure you're familiar with my stance on marketing. It is pretty basic, or not basic, but it's at a very basic level. Marketing is your long game, sales is your short game. Now, when I first started in training, it's funny. I talked a lot at the time about how marketing is your long game and sales is your short game. Like, for example, marketing is your, if you're playing golf, right? That is the long ball, driving the long ball down to the green, right? And your sales is your short game, putting it in the hole. The better your marketing, the the less need to have a strong sales game. The worse your marketing, well, then your sales game has to be really, really strong. And that's hard. There's a lot of friction to that. Now, I haven't really talked much about that in probably the last year and a half, because I felt like I was talking about ad nauseum. I think my audience kind of got it at that point. And so I ended up talking about other things and moving on. But the one thing though, and I will tell you, I talked a lot about marketing as well in the Lighthouse Method. This book really is really more of a book on marketing than anything else, and the buyer's journey, and how your marketing is in a lot of ways a helping your customer down the path from what they view as their pain, or maybe the pain that they don't realize that they had, to a possible solution. And for a lot of us, recruiters, we tend to, if we get on the marketing train, we tend to have this idea that we've got this hammer, and with this hammer, well, everything's a nail. You know the saying, right? We just beat our prospects over the head with the same message constantly, right? About how we're experts, authority, right? And in articles, how-to articles, value articles, and just constantly, right? And so, and that could be effective to a certain degree. I mean, it's effective in the absence of nothing else. But there's a lot more nuance to your marketing, right? You have to be able to understand, or as I put it lately, you have to meet your customer, or your prospect rather, where they're at. If they are really not aware of the pain, or really kind of the real problem that's underlying that pain, then it doesn't do you any good to talk about your authority or your solution, because they're not there yet. You need to go meet them there. And so I think what's going to happen is, right now you got a lot of, right now the prior 3 or 4 years, or however long, 5 years, we were looking at we had a 3.5% unemployment rate. And of course, now they're saying my spec up to 20%. I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't think that. I'd be really shocked if it did. But whether it does or does not doesn't matter. It's their perception that really matters. Oftentimes, it's the prospect's perception of things that really determines their behavior, not really the facts. Now, if you can get their perceptions aligned with the facts, that's that much the better. But you have to be willing to meet them where they're at, and meet them where their perception is at. Right now, what they're thinking, well, probably a lot of them are panicked. Probably a lot of them don't know what to do. Again, they're sinking in quicksand. And just, a month ago, 2 months ago, it was different. Then it was all about growth, opportunity, speed, finding, and of course for them, it's, how do I continue to add staff? How do I continue to upgrade my staff? It's so hard to find people. So hard to find people. So there's the war for talent, right? We beat our prospects into town with that war for talent business, which is true. Don't get me wrong. I did the same thing, but we hammered that horse. And so now I think we really have to change tacks, really understand where they are at. People aren't looking to scale right now, right? They're looking to survive. They're looking for security. They're looking for certainty. So from a messaging perspective, right? When you look at the candidates you're recruiting, if you're working on some job orders right now, if you have job orders that your clients haven't put on hold, and they're actively recruiting, which is fantastic, well, now you have to realize that pitch that you had, that you worked out with your client about a month ago or a few weeks ago, where it was all about the challenge, right, and the opportunity. Now it's time to go back to your client and say, hey, Bob, things have changed a bit, and now we need a different message. Let's talk about security. Let's talk about sustainability. Let's talk about strength of leadership. Because right now, what you should be selling, and again, every industry is going to be a little bit different, but as a general rule, your selling now has to be about security, risk mitigation, sustainability, and strength of leadership. Right now, people want a strong leader. As I mentioned, there's not a lot of good wartime leaders in peacetime, right? And so we are in a period of not really wartime, but if you get my drift, we're in a period of crisis and a rapid change. So if you have a client with a very strong leader, that's a huge selling point, right? But you also have to understand they're also coming from a place of risk mitigation, meaning, let's say, uh, uh, maybe 6 months ago, it was relatively easy to recruit maybe a top tier candidate, meaning they were generally not on the market, right? But at the same time, there was a fair amount of churn in the market, right? If a top tier candidate wanted to go take another job and for a 15-20% raise, they could do so because they felt relatively safe in doing so, because they knew if it didn't work out, they can go get another job. And jobs were plenty, right? Recruiters were always calling them. There's always opportunities. Well, now things are a bit different. Now there may still be opportunities, and there definitely are. But the difference is now they're thinking in the back of their head, what if it doesn't work out? Because moving to a new employer is always a risk, right? Now, of course, there are all those folks that have been laid off. That's fine. But the folks that, let's say, the folks that were the top tier, the cream of the crop, for the most part, unless the company has failed, for the most part, they're probably still employed because their employer needs them, because they need to do more with less, right? I mean, as I've been saying the last week, what would be more valuable? Or what's the better option? $130,000 project manager who brings $1 million in value, or would $100,000 project manager who brings $250,000 in value, right? And you have to get your prospects or your clients to start thinking along those lines, right? So those high value candidates, employees, are being held on to. So you have to realize that even the recruiting game has changed a little bit. And this really goes more to delivery. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. But, when it comes to, because some of these things kind of do meld together, when it comes to your marketing, you have to really consider, again, where your prospects are coming from, right? So, for example, getting back to your marketing and getting back to changing the way you approach things. I think, and I really believe that, and I teach this in Accelerator, and I also taught it to a lesser degree in the DYC Challenge. The Accelerator is where we really go in depth on it. I talk about the buyer's journey, and just in short, because I don't want to go too deep in it, at least right now. The buyer's journey starts with the pain, right? The pain caused by some sort of problem, an underlying problem, right? And then so if someone doesn't recognize that pain, or doesn't really think about it, or misdiagnoses the underlying problem, meaning feels the pain but doesn't really recognize what the real problem is, or uses bad solutions to that problem, right? Then everything else that you're trying to do, your authority, your expertise, the value you provide, your solution, it doesn't matter, right? As an example, if someone is overweight, and let's say you are a CrossFit gym, I use this example all the time, by the way. If you're a CrossFit gym owner and your solution consists of, full body workouts plus Olympic lifting and powerlifting and short bursts of high impact or high intensity training, kettlebells and high fat diet and all these different things, and it really works, right? But if you're trying to talk to somebody who is in pain meaning just they're overweight, right? Or they are getting those love handles. They don't feel sexy anymore. Or they, I don't know, the wife waits for the husband not to be home so she can come out of the shower so he doesn't see her naked because she's embarrassed, or doesn't like to take, or maybe the husband doesn't like to take off his shirt at the pool party anymore and is jealous of his neighbor, Anthony, who's 5 years older with a six pack, right? And yes, he caught his wife looking. That's pain, right? So now, if that person doesn't realize the real problem, meaning, he's not eating a good high-fat diet, or maybe he's not including enough weight training in his regimen. If he doesn't understand that, it doesn't matter how much you say, how much you shove CrossFit down his throat, it doesn't matter, because you didn't meet him where he's at. And so the same thing applies here. Now, a lot of what I taught in the past and how to market was to really educate your client about, or your prospect about, what truly keeps them from hiring the best of the best, what truly creates mishires, and how their use of recruiters and the structure by which they work, which is fundamentally flawed, right? Well, now this kind of shifted, and I'm even still working on my messaging and how I'm shifting my focus. But that's shifted because now the pains they're feeling are different, right? And so you have to really step back and think, okay, what are the pains they're feeling, and what do they think is causing those pains, and what's really causing those pains? And if you don't know, you may need to get on the phone with a lot of leaders and talk to them, and have these sorts of conversations, because otherwise you're just spitballing a couple of scripts that you think might work, and maybe they will, maybe they won't, but again, it's taking the proverbial hammer and looking for some nails. No, you need kind of an entire toolbox, right? And of course, once somebody does recognize their pain, like if you meet them where they're at and can teach them maybe the real problem behind that pain that they have, and of course, show them the consequences of not solving said pain, it's at that point then they care about your authority. It's at that point that they care about your the value that you can provide, and of course, later on, your solution, right? And it's important to realize. So now, a good resource for this is, again, on my YouTube channel. I have a video there called "The Most Persuasive Sentence in the World." And it's, in essence, the sentence is, and not to make this up, this is a book by either, I think his name is Blair Warren or Blake Warren. I think it's Blair Warren. And basically, yes, the book is called The One Sentence Persuasion Course. I'm sorry. But the title of my video is "The Most Persuasive Sentence in the World," in the English language. But in essence, this: people will do anything for someone who can encourage their dreams, justify their failures. What is it? Encourage their dreams, justify their failures, confirm their suspicions, help them throw rocks to their enemies, and allay their fears. I didn't get that in the right order, but it doesn't matter. All five are important. We'll talk about that more when we come back to marketing. But I'll tell you a couple of these, right? How it would apply in today's world. So in your marketing, in your material, in your content, if you can justify someone's failures, right? It builds trust. Meaning, and you could probably have seen this in infomercials, right? If you're overweight, it's not your fault. It's because of the lies the fitness industry has been feeding you for years. Recognize that? Because whoever came up with that in an infomercial was smart enough to realize that you don't point the finger at your prospect and tell them that it's their fault, their failures are their fault, right? You point the finger at their failures and say, hey, that's not your fault, right? Till you justify their failures, right? So what's happening with them right now? Not their fault. They're losing people, not their fault. They're having to lay off people. They feel bad about that, not their fault, right? Encouraging their dreams, confirming their suspicion. I will talk about encouraging their dreams. That's easy, right? If every leader has dreams, maybe of grandeur, maybe not of grandeur, but they want to be a high-performing leader. They want a great team. They want to be a mentor. They want to feel like they're doing a great job for their people. Well, there's things that you can encourage. Now, again, obviously now their dreams may be a little bit different, right? Maybe the dream is to have security, stability, to keep their team together, whatever it is. And so it's kind of important that you take a step back and really go back to the drawing board and think about what are the messages that you're communicating in your marketing, okay? So anyway, we're going to leave that there because I've got we're going to go deeper in it later. I just want to very briefly cover that topic here. Let me see if I have any questions before I move on. Mikey Move says, can't go wrong with a quality golf analogy. You can't, although I will say, I can't golf. My father is a great golfer, great golfer. In fact, he was, I think he was ranked fourth in juniors in the state of Arizona at the time. And then of course, he had me at 17 and joined the Army. So Sorry, Dad. So I think the golf gods decided to skip me because I ruined his professional golfing uh, prospects. So anyway, excuse me. So let's talk about sales. Sales is the third pillar that you need to be looking at. Um, now I'm going to cover this pretty briefly, but so one thing to consider is that um, in the market just a few months ago, it was really easy to be a commodity recruiter, which is right. It's this the get 10 jobs, fill one, right? We all know that the deal to be a commodity recruiter, make a lot of money. Well, that's going to change. And rightly so. And rightly so. And I'm actually glad that's changing. And if you're still in that mode, then you need to get out of that mode very, very quickly. Because for a lot of recruiters, we're not selling, right? Getting a contingency job order doesn't really take a lot of selling. A little bit maybe, but not really a lot. Because for a lot of clients, they're looking for a contingency recruiter. Why? Because in their minds, and they're wrong, but in their minds, yeah, I can get a recruiter to work for me for free and I only pay if they succeed. Fantastic. Why not? Right. It doesn't really work that way, but that's a lot of times that's the perception. And so, and then as a recruiter, we go and of course, we pitch candidates. We're usually better at sales when it comes to the candidates that we recruit. But then, of course, we submit that into a client. But what we're really doing is we're managing the deal, right? We're prepping a client, we're prepping the candidate, we're debriefing, we're looking for holes in the deal, we're looking for potential counter offers and relocation issues that may crop up later, and all these different things, right? And that's really what we do. But in terms of actual real sales, following a real sales process, like real salespeople do, like real professional salespeople, whether they're in software sales or anything like that. But anytime they're selling businesses on high ticket items, there's a real sales process, like actually having a discovery call and needs analysis. And that doesn't mean just taking a job order. That's different, right? I'm not a fan of just taking a job order and then quoting your fee at the end. Like that's how most people train. And so you need to really think, if you don't have a sales process yet, it's now very important that you do so, because right now for the companies that are hiring, again, there's a lot of recruiters out there, or going to be, right? If more so than there are now. At least that's my prediction. Now, in sales, oftentimes a prospect is in what we call option seeking mode. And for example, if they're working with a few recruiters, they want to maybe add another recruiter to the list, and that's another option, right? Or let's say they are price shopping around and they're looking for options. They're always looking for options. So a good salesperson has to have the skill and the ability to bring clarity on a sales call to the prospect and to get them to understand that all those options that they're looking at are not really options. In fact, the fact of looking at options is actually a decision not to solve the problem to begin with. And a skillful salesperson has to be able to cut out all the options, basically eliminate options to where you are the only option. Now, granted, you may not be the right option, in which case you should have the ability and the honor, I guess, or or be honest enough to say that you're not the right option and to point them in the right direction, right? I think too many recruiters nowadays are going to take jobs that they shouldn't be taking out of desperation. But it's important that you use a very specific sales process to eliminate those options, to get them to realize that you are the only option, assuming you're the right one, right? And it takes a lot of skill and understanding of psychology. And I think it's something that if you haven't learned it now, if you've worked in the last 8-10 years when the market was steadily increasing and really hot, it's time to go back to the drawing board and learn that. Because, and again, that's different than your marketing, right? Your marketing is meeting the prospect where they're at on a broad view, and in your content, kind of trying to bring them to where you want them to be, right? So not just articles about value and authority, right? Articles more about the pain that they're feeling, how they feel, justifying their failures, etc. In the sales process, it's similar, right? But instead of a mass market, it's a single person, right? It's a belly to belly, as they say, or in this case, I guess Zoom to Zoom, right? But you have to still be willing to meet them where they're at, understand they're looking for options, bring them through an understanding of what the real problem is, bring them clarity on that, clarity of consequences as well. And from there, get them to realize and start eliminating those options skillfully and tactfully, and kind of honing in on why you're the real solution. So we'll talk more about that in later days. I go pretty deep in this in the accelerator. But it's important that whether you learn it from me, whether you learn from this doesn't matter where you learn it. Well, it does. I mean, learn from somebody good, but there's lots of people out there who aren't very good, or who really don't have a good understanding of the psychology behind sales. But regardless, it is important that right now you're really honing in on that sales piece of it, right? That third pillar, right? So anyway, I'll leave that there. And let's move on, and we'll talk more about that in another live. So, fourth pillar is your delivery, your actual customers that you have right now. Now, realize, simple truth, I think many of us pay lip service to, but we don't really. I think we act the way we act would make one believe that we don't really believe it. But I think now we need to really act like it. And that is, it is cheaper to keep a customer than it is to get a customer, right? We've all heard this before. It's a very common concept. But again, it's one that, as they say, I think Voltaire said, common sense is not so common. I believe he said that. I don't know. It might be misattributed. I'm not sure. But yeah, it comes down to delivery. So right now, for the customers that you have, realize, and this is really important, realize that your customers, especially if they are serviced by other recruiters or just vendors in general, they're being underserved right now, right? Your competitors are probably under communicating and they're under delivering. So now is the time to look at each client and find out, okay, how often can we be communicating with them? And not just to call for, hey, Bob, just looking to check in. Awesome. Although, I guess it's better than nothing. Although you can quickly wear out your welcome if you keep doing that. But valuable information. Hey, Bob, like I said, it's an email. Hey, I just saw this article from Deloitte on leadership in times of crisis. Hey, check it out. I thought you might have an interest in read it, whatever. Sharing best practices amongst your clients for leadership in times of crisis. That's another one. Right. Offering to help them. One of the examples I gave earlier was, if they have to do video interviewing, offering your Zoom account, offering to help them interview people that aren't even through you. Let's say through their HR, just helping them any way they can. But think about your offerings. What are you like? What are you doing for your clients? Are you just putting an ass in the seat? And if you are, you're gonna be the first to go, right? So in your practice, what can you offer in addition at no extra charge? Like what extra can you do, right? What extra can you do? In addition, even beyond what extra can you do, how can you unbundle your services? And this kind of really goes into sales as well. There may be companies out there that really right now they can't justify paying a $40,000 fee, right? So are you willing to say, no problem, I get that, but hey, tell you what, here's a problem area that you have, or maybe you need somebody to map the market, or maybe you need somebody to get you a short list of candidates, or maybe you need somebody to do reference checking, or maybe you need somebody to design an interview process for you. What can you do to unbundle your services so that way you can at least do business with your customer or get a new client in, even at a lower price point, maybe on a piece of your service, knowing that by doing so, you get them as a client. And again, once they spend $1 with you, they're more likely to spend 2 and then 3 and so on. So what can you do to not only expand your service offering, or at least do more without having to charge more, but also how can you unbundle a bit and start offering different things, because if you're selling one thing and one thing only, an ass in a seat, there's not a lot of value in that right now, right? There is if you happen to have the right ass, I suppose, but that's, you got to have more in your toolbox than that, right? So that is going to be on delivery. We'll talk more about that later. Let's talk about the fourth. Let me see if they have any questions here before I move on. Excellent book that defines the sales process. This is Ken Poulter. The tactics you can use, I recommend Conceptual Selling by Stefan Hyman. I've not heard of that. I'll check it out. Thank you for the recommendation. Michelle Bigler, would you recommend ever lowering your placement fee? Potentially. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you were to ask me that a month ago, I'd say no, don't lower your fee. I haven't lowered my fee. But I'm not going to say no at this, because look, at the end of the day, not that you want to compete on price, but there is a reality right now that your customers are looking at every single penny. Now, obviously, the better option is to sell them the value of what you do. I think a better option might be unbundling a little bit, so you don't have to feel like you're bending over and taking it, if you know what I mean. Because it's never a good feeling to feel like you have to drop your price to your current client and then figure, okay, well, gosh, how am I going to get them back up when the economy comes back, right? And so I kind of, man, that's a tough one. But yeah, I think it's something that you need to at least understand, that if you're faced with that, what do? You need to understand that. I think have a think about what your current pipeline is, what you've got going on, and if you understand that, at least make the decision before you're asked, because at some point you're going to be asked. So make the decision what you're going to do. Now, should I say you should be like a 10% recruiter? No, like that's ridiculous. If you are going to lower your price for maybe a current client, there has to be, I'd imagine, some sort of stipulation, or they've got to give you something, or I don't know. You're going to have to figure that out, and I'll talk more about that as we get more into sales and delivery. But it is something that I think is going to be a possibility for sure. Let's see. Operations and team. So I want to cover these here very, very briefly, because I just realized it's almost 6, and tonight is taco night in a row, second taco night in a row. We're eating taco leftovers from last night. So operations and team. If you have people, even if you don't have people, operations still applies to a certain extent. But if you have people right now, if you're a search firm owner, you have to start to really look in your operations and your team pretty damn closely. So if you've been the cool leader who is always the great boss, super friendly, never really checks numbers, never checks in weekly, monthly, quarterly, tracks metrics, then you need to start doing that, not only for your benefit but for theirs, right? Because just as I said, being a peacetime leader is different than being a wartime leader. Well, during a peacetime leader, when things are great, it's easy to let things kind of slip if somebody's still producing. But as a wartime leader, that person who is producing now in a war, he may have been talking a big game in peacetime, but now production slips, not making the calls. They're scared. They don't know what to do, right? So it's important that you take a firmer grip on them. So, I talked about this a little bit in terms of the kind of conversation that you need to have with your employees. So I'm not going to cover it here. I may cover it in the future. I'm short on time here. But you can check out that video. I believe it was the one from 2 days ago. I believe it's in the video section in Facebook, or in the Headhunter Executive Recruiter Community video section. But basically everybody needs to go on a plan, right? Including you. Needs to go on a performance plan. It's important, right? But you also need to start taking a look at your operation as well. Where are there inefficiencies? Is there a job that could be done by one person instead of two? Now, this is where it gets difficult, because if it means furloughing people, or if it means even outright laying off people, what you don't want to do is, as a wartime leader, you have to make hard decisions at times. And sometimes you don't want to put your entire company at risk to keep one person who might be marginal, because it would make you feel bad to lay them off, right? And sometimes it's your responsibility to the people that are producing to do the hard thing and make the hard decision on their behalf, because it's their ass on the line if somebody else brings down the company, right? And you got to consider that. So I'll make sure that's a point of conversation in a future live, but it's something really you got to think about. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this one because I'm short on time. We'll talk more later. Last is going to be finances. Now, again, I think it was a couple of days ago I talked about cash management. Obviously, if you don't have a current P&L, get one right now. If you don't have a cash flow statement ready, get one right now. Know your numbers. Know your break points. Know which point you need to change. Know your levers, right? Know your runway. And I talked about this a couple days ago, but your runway is in essence, how much cash do you have on hand right now to sustain yourself personally and professionally, right? Usually personally, you should have, at least 6 months plus, if not more. Business, you should have, usually companies have like a couple months. You should probably extend that out, which means cutting some expenses, finding ways to inject cash, getting paid on your deals earlier, offering discounts on fees for early payment. You're going to have to get creative with it. We'll talk more about that. I'll do another session on cash management, but just know that if you don't have a handle on your finances are basically, if it's a big question mark. And I think for a lot of recruiters, we're salespeople. We're not accountants or bean counters, except for you accounting recruiters who were once accountants, then you got a leg up on this. But for the majority of us, we don't like creating P&Ls and cash flow statements. Why? Because it's depressing. It's depressing, right? We just think, hey, I've got this much cash in the bank, I'm good. Our cash management, when times are good, is, let me swipe the credit card. Does it go through? It does. Awesome. I'm good. We need to get out of that mindset. And so take a look at that training that I did a couple of days ago. Think about, cash management, what your runway is. And again, we'll talk more about that in future lives. Okay. But those are the 6 pillars that it's very important that you sit down and write this out. Where are you at in each of those 6 areas? So the 6 areas are, to recap, you've got your mindset, you've got your marketing, you've got sales, you've got your delivery, and you've got your operations and team, and you've got finance and cash, right? Those 6 areas are very, very important that you get a handle on right now. So let me see if I have any questions on this, and then we are going to give you a couple more updates, and that is it. Judy says, we have an unbundled service for small business clients, and it's worked well. They never would be able to afford a 25% fee, and we've gained a lot of repeat business. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, you may have to figure out ways, for, looks like Judy has, but for a lot of you, may have to figure out ways to unbundle things a bit, because it's easier oftentimes for a company to justify a smaller fee for a smaller service. Obviously, again, I really hesitate on and completely just dropping your price, but find ways to get creative with it and get the customer, get the client, right? Because you can always move that client up the value chain, right? And so be willing to work with them to get them in, right? What's the best way to get a meaningful commitment for agency exclusive from a client if working on a role on a contingent basis? Okay, so I'm going to probably answer that in a future lesson, just because I literally have to log off here in 3 minutes, and that's a much longer discussion. Although I'd say right now it's going to be so it's going to be the fact that they're looking at a situation where your competitors are job board, because for a client they say, well, everybody's getting laid off, I can just put a job up on the job board, job post, and I'll get tons of candidates. Well, that might be the case, but they're not going to get the candidates that they want. And again, I go back to is it better to have a $130,000 project manager that offers $1 million in value, or a $100,000 project manager that offers $250,000 in value, right? The $100,000 project managers who offer $250,000 in value are the ones getting laid off most likely. The 130K project managers who are not, who offer $1 million in value, are likely, their companies have their claws in because they need them so badly because they have to do more with less right now, right? So those people are actually harder to recruit because now, again, I go back to there's the risk factor. It's the risk mitigation. There's a risk in moving to any company because if it doesn't work out, what then? Even if their company is sinking to a certain degree, well, maybe it's the devil that they know versus the devil that they don't know. So there's that to consider. So I think that's probably one of the big areas that you need to really focus on and get your clients, to buy into, to get them to, again, maybe on an exclusive relationship. I would say I'll dive more into that in a future Thrive Daily. But yeah, that's probably the core the core idea that I would build off of, right? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I know there's some other questions here, but I do have to jam. Ken has a question about SBA loans. I'll get to that on the next one here because, again, I'm kind of jammed up. But all right, so that said, guys, one last thing, and not to be promotional here, but two things. One, sign up for the Thrive Dailies. That is free. I dropped a link in here as well. Secondly, for those of you who may not know this, but I have opened up Accelerator. Accelerator has been my flagship program for many, many years, not many years, but for a year and a half. And it's 10K plus. And for a lot of people have seen the how good Accelerator is, right, for the people in this group. A lot of people haven't been able to afford it or kind of shied away from that high price tag. So what I've done is I've opened it up and to try to help people through this recession, because this is the time where people need to pivot and pivot hard. What I've done is I've taken the challenge that we just got out of, where it's very high touch and lots of role playing and hot seats and right, and daily trainings. Combine it with Accelerator, so it's basically a full Accelerator program plus a challenge for 90 days, as well as having Accelerator alumni in there as mentors, and I'm offering that for $2,000. It's in essence about 80% off of what it normally is. That's only for these next 90 days. After that, the price is going back up to its normal price. But that's just simply a way for, if you need to get into Accelerator and you've never done it, but you need a way to kind of really jumpstart your business, now is the time. Then you can get in for a fraction of the price, and you'll get a lot more out of it as well, because we're actually adding a lot to it. For the Accelerator members that are currently in there, hopefully you guys have known, if you guys haven't heard yet, but the current Accelerator members that are within your 6 months of support, you're now being upgraded to private clients for the next 90 days. Ex-Accelerator members, the alumni who have are outside of your 6 months of support window, you guys can participate in the program for free. You'll see a lot of new stuff in there, a lot of it specific to recessions. And of course, obviously, we're going to want you to act as mentors. And so the idea is to bring a lot of new folks, a lot of the alumni together as a group, and in essence, pivot your businesses as I'm pivoting mine as well. Right. So I'll drop the sales page for that one. I've got a payment plan as well if you want to do that. Again, not to be overly promotional, but it is what it is, right? It's the way I'm pivoting my business, because that certainly wasn't my plan 2 weeks ago, but I decided to pivot as a way to really create a group of owners or independent recruiters or whatever you guys are together to pivot all as a group. Okay. So I'll drop that in there. And yeah, that's it. So anyway, sign up for Thrive Daily as well. I'll have another live session at some point tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. I'll send the email out to everybody on the Thrive list what time that will be. And yeah, with that said, folks, that is it. So if there's any other questions here, that's it. All right, folks, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And as I've been saying for a while, show healthcare workers some love today, because they certainly didn't ask for this. But just like the GIs in World War I and World War II, who may have joined in peacetime when they had to go to war, they didn't ask for the war, but they rose to the occasion. Healthcare workers right now, let's say this goes away, then hey, no worries. But if it gets bad, these healthcare workers who did not ask for this are going to be putting their lives at risk, and more importantly, the lives of their elderly loved ones at risk, to hold the line for you. So please show a healthcare worker some love today, and or donate. If you have any masks, please donate to them. They need them. And with that said, peace out. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey, thank you for watching the Thrive Daily video series for recruiters on how to pivot your business so you can survive and thrive during this recession. Make sure you subscribe, sign up at thrivedaily.io, and as always, recruiters, happy hunting. Oh.